Now, arrests of passengers suspected of being drunk at UK airports and on flights have risen by 50% in the last year, according to an investigation carried out by the BBC's Panorama programme. Critics of the airline industry say that a voluntary code on alcohol sales isn't working and want the government to amend licensing laws. Tina Daly has this report.
Where in the UK can you buy alcohol at 4 a.m. 7 days a week? The answer is at an international airport, and it seems that it's leaving passengers and crew with a hangover. An investigation by BBC Panorama has revealed that arrests of those suspected of being drunk at UK airports and on flights have risen by 50% in the past year. Half of the 4,000 cabin crew who took part in a survey carried out by Panorama and Unite the Union said they had either experienced or witnessed verbal, physical or sexual abuse by drunk passengers on board a UK flight.
People just see us as barmaids in the sky. They would touch your breasts or they'd touch your bum or your legs, or, I mean, I've had hands going up my skirt before.
Phil Ward, the managing director of low-cost airline Jet2, has already banned alcohol sales on flights before 8 a.m. and wants the industry to take tougher measures. Do you think airports are doing enough?
I think they could do more. I think the retailers could do more as well. 2-litre steins of beer in bars, mixers and miniatures in duty-free shops, which can only be there for one reason.
But the Airport Operators Association insists that their code of practice does work.
I don't accept that the airports don't sell alcohol responsibly. The sale of alcohol, it per se, is not a problem. It's the misuse of it and drinking to excess and then behaving badly.
Earlier this year, a House of Lords committee called for airport licensing to be brought into line with pubs and bars. A government decision on whether to call time on early morning drinking at airports is now expected in the autumn. Tina Daly, BBC News.
Well, let's talk about this a little more. I'm joined by Ali Murphy, who you saw in that clip. She's a former cabin crew manager with Virgin. And in our Salford studios is Ross McNichol, who's experienced firsthand what it's like to travel with drunk passengers. Welcome, both of you, to the programme. Ali, to you, first of all. Did all of that ring true to you? How bad does it actually get?
Well, in my experience, I think the worst thing that ever happened to me was a time when a passenger had mixed medication with alcohol, and it caused them to completely lose awareness of where they were. They didn't think they were on a plane. They thought they were somewhere being trapped, and they tried to open the aircraft door mid-flight.
Try to open the door?
Yeah, I mean, it can't be done, thankfully, but it scares people around them, so we had to pin him down and restrain him.
Ross, I know that this exact thing happened to you. You were on a flight from Turkey to Manchester. Just tell our viewers what actually happened.
Hi, Matthew. Yeah, quite a similar incident. A woman drunk far too much from duty-free entered the plane very inebriated, and by the time we took off, we immediately had to be diverted to Stansted Airport rather than arriving at destination Turkey.
How aggressive did they get, the group that were drinking, and how, as a passenger's point of view, how uncomfortable did you all feel?
For me, looking over, it was massively inconvenient, but I felt sorry for those who were in the immediate vicinity of this woman in particular. She was very abusive, verbally abusive and threatening to people, not just the passengers, but particularly the stewards as well, who had to take a lot of verbal flak for them.
Ali, I mean, you're trained cabin crew for exactly these sorts of events. How difficult, though, does it get when you say to somebody, actually, I'm not going to give you any more alcohol?
It can go one of two ways. If they're a reasonable mindset, then they're like, OK, that's fine, maybe later. But it can, 9 times out of 10, it went the other way, where you got a very negative comeback from it. Why aren't you serving me any more alcohol? I deserve this, I've paid for my ticket, and how dare you tell me I've not had enough? And people would get defensive. And the problem is that if you were in a bar when this would happen, you just chuck them out. But when you're on a contained aircraft, you're the only one dealing with that, and it just seems to escalate because people don't know where to go from there. They are in this angry state, and they either continue through or they back down if they were wrong. And in my experience, drunk people don't often admit that they're wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that is true. I mean, Ross, you talked about the disruption on your flight, so you're thinking you're going from Turkey to Manchester, you end up at Stansted. Give me an idea of the sort of chaos that actually causes for all of you lot on board.
Oh, it was absolute nuisance. Just a point made, but previously then, it did escalate. She was told to calm down. She escalated, made it all worse. So we definitely had to land. We eventually arrived at Stansted, but our destination, Antalya, we didn't arrive until 3 hours later. You could see how annoyed everyone else on the plane was when the jubilation of her actually being taken off the plane actually happened. But when we eventually arrived in Turkey 3 hours later, it caused us so much stress. We were 3 hours later for our holiday, arriving in the middle of the morning, struggling to get transfers organised just due to the chaos that it was caused. It was unnecessary.
Ali, isn't the simple explanation? We saw one argument in the thing was it's not the alcohol, it's the passengers. Wouldn't it just be better not to serve alcohol on a flight? Plain and simple.
Do you know, it sounds like that would be a simple attitude, but the people who, and it's the majority of people that can responsibly drink alcohol and enjoy their times there, you're kind of punishing them. And we're not a nanny state. We don't tell people you mustn't drink, you cannot drink here and you can't do that. So it's about controlling that minority that seem to think it's okay to get completely boozed up before they travel. How do we deal with that, and how do we moderate how much they're actually drinking?
So if it's not a complete ban, what other ideas do you think they should be considering?
I think if we limit the amount of alcohol that's available to them in airports, for example, perhaps there's some kind of system where you only get 2 drinks. Either you have tokens, or you scan your boarding pass, or somewhere where you are limited to the amount that you can drink in the airport. And I think duty-free wise, you can buy all these bottles of booze. If they weren't available to you until you reach your destination, it would perhaps...
So people don't drink those on board, do they?
And that's what causes the problem.
They do drink?
Yeah, because the crew was trying to monitor how much a passenger is drinking. But if they're sneaking little sips of their duty-free purchase...
And they do
under
that?
their seat, yeah, many, many times. And that's what causes most of the problems.
Let's go back to our Salford studios. I mean, I know you were trapped in the middle of it. Do you have any ideas as to what the best way forward was? You described very eloquently what it was like when someone was told no and how it escalated. Yeah. What do you think should happen?
It's hard to come up with a simple solution. Obviously, the alcohol industry, airports in particular, is a massive industry, and you can't just necessarily say, stop using it. I've used that service before and had no issues. But there needs to be some sort of rules or discipline put in place. These ladies in particular on my flight, and what was taken off them and confiscated was a large bottle of vodka, which they managed to get through in a short amount of time, and that was purchased from duty-free. I've purchased from duty-free before, and I do not recall a severe enough warning about the use of the alcohol before getting on board the plane. Something needs to be put in place in order to make sure this is basically not happening again.
So exactly what Ali was talking about. Just one word, if you would, Ali. Are Brits worse?
Yes.
They are.
I wish I could say that, but it is a worldwide problem, but I guess I've dealt with more British people.
Well, that's depressing. Ali Murphy and Ross McNichol, thanks very much for joining us here on the programme. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Now, one final story to show you. A lioness who was rescued from a zoo in Aleppo in Syria has given birth just hours after arriving at a wildlife park in Jordan. Dana was transported to a reserve with 4 other lions, 2 bears and 2 tigers via Turkey in a 3-month operation. Staff found this cutest of newborn cubs in Dana's cage on Saturday. They've named her Hajar, which means fled,